I just wanted to change the scenery. You know, the grit started leaving a bad taste in my mouth.
Breaking news. The Santa Fe, New Mexico, home of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa was discovered lifeless. An enigmatic conclusion to the story of a man who went from being a Hollywood legend to vanishing from public view. There were no indications of foul play, according to the police. What transpired, though, is still an open mystery. A man with a history full of unseen struggles, Gene Hackman won 2 Oscars for his acting. He was known for being confrontational and never shying away from settling disputes with his fists. He was once jailed for theft and mocked as someone who had no chance of making it. He left Hollywood not because his star had faded, but for reasons of a far greater magnitude. Is this really the last chapter, or is Gene Hackman's life a mystery in and of itself? Let's investigate. It was more than just a career gamble for Gene Hackman when he decided to follow his acting dream. As he made mistakes that were practically inevitable, he was unwittingly giving up on the things that mattered most to him. After believing Faye Maltese would be his rock, Hackman wed her in 1956. As he faltered in his pursuit of a career in cinema, Hackman was still a relatively unknown actor who had to take odd jobs to make ends meet when this happened. Their early years as a married couple were filled with joy and simplicity. Even though everyone else thought her husband would fail miserably, Faye had faith in him. They were married and had 3 children, Christopher Allen, Elizabeth Jean, and Leslie Ann. They finished building a house together. In Hollywood, love and success are rarely intertwined, as fate often dictates. After a meteoric rise to fame in the late 60s with 1967's Bonnie and Clyde, Hackman solidified his position as a major star in the 70s with hits like 1971's The French Connection and 1972's The Poseidon Adventure. Nevertheless, Hackman's family life was overshadowed by the shadow of Hollywood's spotlight. Hackman was so engrossed in his work that he traveled from city to city, working on different films. He started to feel increasingly alienated from Faye and the kids. As time went on, he made fewer and fewer phone calls home, and attending family dinners became an expensive treat. While performing, you develop a very egocentric outlook, you told the New York Times in 1989. All your life, you've been yearning for approval. I find it difficult to say no when I am successful. As a poor kid, I couldn't handle the temptations, the fame, or the wealth. After much waiting, Faye Maltese finally gave up. The gap between them had become too wide to ever be filled. They finalized their divorce in 1986 following 30 years of matrimony. The first marriage of Hackman came to a peaceful end. Scrambles and court battles avoided. Nothing but the heartache of a man who mourned his loss too late. I was gone for too long, Hackman said bitterly in an interview with GQ when asked for advice on raising his son. My advice is non-existent. Did this come from making bad decisions, or was it a natural outcome of always having to prove oneself? He learned the hard way that success was not worth the unbearable cost of sacrificing family happiness. Despite his continued career success and status as one of Hollywood's top actors following his 1986 divorce from Faye Maltese, Hackman was no longer supported by his family. Betsy Arakawa, a pianist who had no ties to the Hollywood elite and 32 years Hackman's junior, changed his life. Hackman had lived alone for years before they met. Betsy worked at a gym in the late 80s, and that's where they first met. Sightseeing and haste were non-existent. Their bond blossomed organically. For the first time in his life, Hackman felt at peace thanks to Betsy. The marriage of Hackman and Betsy took place in 1991. On this occasion, he was determined to prioritize his career over his family life. They opted for a low-key existence, far from the limelight and the press. Many devastating tragedies had befallen Gene Hackman before he finally found peace with his life, tragedies he wished he could put behind him. His mother's untimely death in 1962 was one of the first abrupt events in his life. And Lyda Elizabeth Hackman was killed in a fire that broke out in her home. Apparently, she had been drinking excessively before she dozed off with a lighted cigarette, which led to the rapid engulfment of the house in flames. Hackman felt an intolerable sense of shame in addition to the pain of losing a loved one. Only his mother had ever given him the benefit of the doubt and thought he could make it as an actor. Regrettably, she was absent to observe Hackman's rise to fame in the entertainment industry. I never sung for my father reflected his own life story, so he confessed in a rare interview that if he could choose one film to show his mother, it would be this tragedy. He seldom spoke publicly about it. But that wasn't the end of the agony. The untimely death of Hackman's best friend, Norman Gary, in 1982 dealt him yet another devastating blow. One of Hackman's closest confidants, Gary was a famous entertainment lawyer. There were more questions than answers after his unexpected passing, which led to speculation regarding unresolved financial issues and left Hackman bereft of closure. Hackman, in an effort to distract himself from his loss, dove headfirst into his acting career and played role after role. He later confessed in an interview that he had given his life to acting so he wouldn't have to drown in his grief. He became firmly entrenched in Hollywood's elite during that time, when he took on several pivotal roles, such as Under 1988. But Hackman had his fair share of physical conflicts with danger in addition to emotional losses. Among the most notable occurrences was his involvement in a street brawl in Hollywood in 2001. Accidentally, Hackman was involved in a collision with another vehicle. With blatant signs of rage, two young men emerged. Unaware that they were provoking a former Marine, they threw insults at Hackman instead of handling the situation calmly. Despite being 71 years old, Hackman was not easily frightened. He landed the first punch without exchanging many words. In the midst of the street, mayhem ensued as the three of them swung at each other. The police arrived swiftly to disperse the altercation, but no one was taken into custody. This incident further demonstrated that Hackman's fighting spirit remained intact even after he left his action-packed roles. But 2012 was probably the year when you came dangerously close to dying. Hackman was hit by a truck while riding his bike without a helmet on a road in Florida. His legion of devoted followers were understandably worried that he had sustained life-threatening injuries when word of the accident spread. Nevertheless, Hackman managed to stay alive in some way. His injuries were minor, so the hospital released him the very same day. His friends and family said that he continued to ride a bike even after he became old. However, after that incident, he insisted on always wearing a helmet. In 2004, surprise withdrawal from Hollywood by Gene Hackman following the completion of Welcome to Mooseport, a comedy. Unlike other legends, there was no formal announcement, press conference, or memorial film to kick off their careers. He just faded away from view. Many people at the time thought Hackman was simply taking a vacation, but that was actually his final appearance in a commercial film. Doubts started to creep in. Why would a top-tier actor who can still hold his own on screen abruptly vanish? Does it have anything to do with the fact that Welcome to Mooseport made just $14 million at the box office, despite having a budget of $30 million? Did he stop finding scripts interesting enough? Or had the glitter and mayhem of Hollywood just worn him down? A far more intricate reason actually existed. The truth was that Hackman had started to notice that his health had declined. He had been taken to the hospital in a hurry in 1990 because of a serious arterial blockage. Angioplasty was immediately performed by the doctors after they realized his heart condition was critical. He might not have made it if he had gotten to the hospital even an hour later. Hackman kept acting for more than 10 years after undergoing surgery that required him to alter his lifestyle. His health problems reappeared in the early 2000s. On set, he began to feel physically and mentally drained. Working long hours under intense scene pressure and constantly traveling became too much. Hackman said he was too exhausted to keep acting in an interview with Empire magazine. He went on to say that his doctors had warned him about the dangers of taking on too much stress in his film career and other areas. In addition, Hackman would prefer not to do anything at all if he knew he couldn't give it his all. However, health was not the sole factor. The chaos and extravagance of Hollywood had never really appealed to Hackman. His distaste for the industry's practices was something he had always been forthright about. He despised being the center of attention and despised having to act nice during interviews and awards shows. He famously stated, "I trained to be an actor, not to be a star." That was way back when. He had given it his all after more than 4 decades in what he saw as the insatiable machine that is Hollywood. So he decided to just leave it all behind. Quiet farewell with no ceremony. He cut out attending any and all events related to movies, including red carpet appearances, and declined every acting opportunity that presented itself. Even after he turned down their repeated attempts at a comeback, Hackman continued to receive approaches from directors. While making an unusual public appearance in 2008, he was asked whether he would ever act again, and his response was straightforward: no. He made a joke about how he might be interested in reading a great script as long as it was shot in his house and he didn't have to leave. Gene Hackman maintained a healthy work-life balance by pursuing interests outside of his legendary film career. He stopped attending expensive parties and concerts after leaving Hollywood. He chose to immerse himself in his own hobbies, which brought him serenity, such as writing and painting. After a while, Gene Hackman decided to follow his dream of being a writer instead of an actor. Mostly writing historical fiction and crime thrillers, he published 5 novels. Among them, Pursuit, 2013, and Justice for None, 2004. Not only did writing keep his imagination alive, but it also kept him out of the spotlight. Hackman may have retired from acting, but he continued to make contributions even after that. He provided the voice for 2 documentaries about his former military unit, the United States Marine Corps, in 2016 and 2017. This was more than a job to him, it was an opportunity to honor his heritage. Hackman maintained ties to his formative years long after he left Hollywood. Hackman also made time for painting, an interest of his that he had never shown to the public. He never showed or sold his paintings, he did it only for personal enjoyment. "No one should be able to view my artwork." He did say once that it's private. The act of painting brought him peace. Distant from the frantic pace of Hollywood. Few were aware that Hackman was a professional race car driver in addition to his fame for playing tough guys on screen. During the 70s, he was a member of the Sports Car Club of America and a winner of the Long Beach Grand Prix celebrity race. In 1983, he experienced the pinnacle of his career when he drove a Toyota for Dan Gurney's legendary racing team in the renowned 24 Hours of Daytona. One event that stands out in Hackman's memory is his 6-hour endurance race at California's Sears Point Raceway. A state-of-the-art race car at the time, his vehicle was an Audi Quattro. Unfortunately, he had to pull out of the race after his brakes locked up and his car flipped. He joked afterwards that he should have used a stunt double instead, even though he wasn't hurt. But chasing speed isn't a sustainable pursuit. Hackman noticed that his reflexes were getting slower as he got older. He conceded that lightning reflexes are required and that one must cease when they begin to weaken. He opted to stop racing altogether due to health concerns and instead devote his time to less risky pursuits like painting and cycling. Hackman stopped wanting expensive sports cars after he left the fast-paced racing industry. He preferred more realistic modes of transportation instead. Around Santa Fe, he frequently drove a Toyota Tundra, a powerful yet understated pickup truck that suited his humble lifestyle. In spite of his advanced years, Hackman maintained his fitness by regularly cycling long distances. He continued to ride an electric bike well into his 90s, demonstrating that his vivacious personality had never waned. Although Hackman had retired from professional racing, his passion for cars remained unwavering. In the past, his race car of choice was a 1983 Toyota Celica GT. His car collection, however, mirrored his newfound desire for peace and quiet. His refined taste was on display in his choice of long-lasting, functional models rather than flashy supercars. One such vehicle was the Porsche Panamera, a luxury sedan with potent performance. For individuals who value understated elegance, the Mercedes E-Class is a comfortable and understated option. He still had a soft spot for high-performance vehicles, as evidenced by his acquisition of a Ford Mustang Shelby, a symbol of unfiltered American muscle. His interest in technology and the growing popularity of electric vehicles was reflected in his modern choice, the Tesla Model S. Despite the fact that Hackman's life had slowed down, he retained his adventurous spirit. He had just discovered a fresh approach to embracing it. Hackman was a huge American football fan in addition to his passion for cars. He was a frequent honorary guest at Jacksonville Jaguars games because of his profound love for the team. Even after his on-screen appearances ended, he continued to prioritize his hobbies and interests. Though he was rarely seen in public, Gene Hackman always managed to grab attention when he did. People in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where he and Betsy Arakawa had resided for a long time, would sometimes see the legendary actor filling up at a gas station. Hackman, dressed casually, going about their normal lives as anyone else, no bodyguards, no paparazzi and swarms. The third-generation Toyota pickup truck he was driving piqued people's interest even more. It wasn't the usual flashy supercar or luxury vehicle seen on Hollywood stars' roads, but rather a sturdy, powerful, and functional vehicle. His Tundra could conquer any terrain thanks to its 5.7-liter V8 engine and TRD 4x4 off-road package, which combined to produce 375 horsepower. In addition to an ARE truck bed cover, the truck had privacy glass and Bilstein shock absorbers. Every one of them is crafted to ensure a life of ease and stealth. Hackman was revealed by this decision. He remained with a simple, practical vehicle, even though many affluent actors drove Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, or Lamborghinis. It was a perfect reflection of his character. Practical, unpretentious, and indifferent to attention. Even in retirement, Hackman never compromised his integrity for the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. A legendary figure who embodied boundless strength while opting for a modest lifestyle. The late Gene Hackman was a multi-talented artist. He was contradictory and perceptive in every way. In real life, he may be aggressive, confrontational, and even violent toward directors. On the other hand, he could just up and disappear from Hollywood. He was uninterested in gaining notoriety or pleasing anyone else but himself. He was a career rebel. An icon who departed in his own way. That was who he was and how he did things. An accomplishment that not everyone is capable of. An outstanding actor was just one of Gene Hackman's many talents. The very definition of tenacity and determination, he exemplified both. He became one of Hollywood's most illustrious icons despite facing skepticism and contempt as a young man. In Hackman's case, success isn't dependent on chance. Perseverance and self-confidence are key. Hackman, in contrast to many Hollywood stars who are still chasing the limelight, is living a quiet, content life in Santa Fe with his wife, away from the pressure to prove himself to the world. He was a man who refused to conform to the expectations of those around him, and that is just as important as the iconic parts he played, such as Popeye Doyle and Lex Luthor. Gene Hackman's legacy will endure, even though the world was shocked to hear of his and Betsy's passing. His legions of admirers will never forget his shows, his biography, and the real man behind the myth. Next, how about you? Do you have any recollections of Gene Hackman? By his iconic performances, his memorable words, or just by living life according to his own rules? Join us in remembering a genuine Hollywood icon by leaving a comment that reads "R.I.P. Gene Hackman" if you respect Gene Hackman. A man who managed to win over his peers in the business world. The video you're viewing here will give you a better idea of Gene Hackman's life and work. To find out everything, watch it right now. To ensure that you never miss an episode featuring the untold backstory of your favorite legends, subscribe to our channel.